All right, I'm signing on this morning um because I'm making it's Sunday morning, and I am a Christian, and for those who are have historically uh, judged me and told me what I should be doing as a Christian on Sundays, and yet feel led uh, by more peaceful. Um, and there's already been a switch as far as psychologically, um, because I had a really horrible dream yesterday evening, and and then when I woke up this morning and thought, well, you know what, I am like so fed up with all the evil surrounding me at all times. And I just flopped open my Bible and came to the book of Daniel, which I was having a conversation with a person, and I think I talked about it a little bit. That and I spoke the words. The book of Daniel seems to be screaming at me again right now. Um, and I woke up. That was like 3 or 4 days ago. And I woke up first thing this morning, flopped open my Bible, not with any intention of looking for any specific passage. I don't, again, I believe Jesus set me aside from reading the Bible for the purpose of being a real time and present day testimony um, to stories from the Bible. And so I flopped open my Bible and it opened to the book of Daniel. I didn't realize that it was the book of Daniel when I opened it, but what I did realize was it was a parable, not really a parable, because I think it's a true story about Nebuchadnezzar. And even the characters within most of the the persons who represent Jesus, I can use or Christianity, I can usually recognize, but uh, uh, like I don't know that much about Nebuchadnezzar. I know he was the guy who was a was a king who went around, I don't know, claiming riches or whatever. In other words, I'm still not clear, and I'm not acting. I'm not clear on exactly who Nebuchadnezzar was, other than king. And anyway, the story that my Bible flopped open to, not like supernaturally. I opened my Bible and there it was, and I started reading, and it was him uh, 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 calling for all the mystics and whatnot to interpret the dream that he had, and he saw it as a horrible dream. My dream that I had yesterday evening was a horrible dream. Um, it started out really good, like I was being led to like a really wonderful thing, and then it was not so wonderful, and uh, I'm not looking for anybody else's interpretation of it. But Nebuchadnezzar's dream had to do with a tree, and of being like a tree of cornucopia, like it had all kinds of fruit, and he was instructed to cut the tree down, and it would provide for all peoples. And then Daniel, maybe he didn't like that that interpretation, so he brought Daniel in, and Daniel basically told him that and I should probably grab the Bible version that I have, because there's so many different ones. And so it's this version. And ironically, the orange cover and the project that I'm working on right now involve the color orange. So it's the NIV Holy Bible Large Print New International Version. New International Version. Let me see if I can further identify any specifics. No. All right. So, and it says, and I'm not a minister or a priest. Nebuchadnezzar's dream of a tree. King Nebuchadnezzar, to the nations and peoples of every language who live in all the earth, may you prosper greatly. It is my pleasure to tell you about the miraculous signs and wonders that the Most High God has performed for me. How great are his signs, how mighty his wonders. His kingdom is an eternal kingdom. His dominion endures from generation to generation. And I thought to myself, wow, it seems to me that Jesus visited Nebuchadnezzar in his dream. And as I read further, it seemed like Nebuchadnezzar was accepting this this idea that his responsibility, even as a mere king on earth, that he has a responsibility to provide for all peoples, as long as he's calling himself king. So I'm reading it and I'm thinking, wow, that is fantastic. And then Daniel comes in and says, well, that's not good news for your enemies, as far as I can see, basically, is what Daniel said. I can't believe I'm like taking on, I would love to get feedback on this. I don't want to seem like I'm, taking on a role as a guru or a minister. I just found it really interesting. And since I've yet to find even a Christian Bible study class that allows for, real-time interaction where there's not a person controlling the conversation, and it was odd that my dream that I had yesterday evening was really horrific. And it involved, I really don't want to talk about my dream because it wasn't a good one. But as I moved throughout my morning, I became in a better in a better mood because Jesus is my Lord and Savior, and whatever my dream meant, if it was a foreshadowing or revealance of activity going on in secret by some secret society around me. Um, Jesus is my Lord and Savior, and in the end, Jesus is going to make everything uh, right for myself and my biological children. No matter who tries to put Satan in my path, either psychologically or emotionally or physically, um, Jesus is going to make everything right in the end. Um, the So as I started to move throughout my morning, I thought, you know what, I need to get my mind off of this dream that I had, and and I had this ugly black pot. I don't like the color black in my place. My entire front of my kitchen is very dark, and my appliances are black. The refrigerator's black, the dishwasher's black, and it's not a skin color association. It's a mood that is created that I don't like with the color black and the very dark veneered cabinets. I prefer light wood because I prefer natural lighting, and and my interpretation of dirty cooking is a dirty kitchen. And for whatever reason, the energies that all this black appliances brings into my kitchen, uh, I like my kitchen clean before I'm going to cook or bake anything. I keep uh, historically a clean kitchen. And I like when I'm cooking for there to be natural lighting coming in, as in sunlight coming in from all directions. Um, because I feel like it's Jesus' presence uh, and Jesus participating in, as in his presence shining through. I am the way, the truth, and the light. And and whatever whatever anybody else feels about what I'm saying, I don't care about what anybody else is purposefully trying to manipulate and maneuver my words and what I'm trying to express and what I'm saying. Um, I like my oven to be clean. I like my refrigerator to be clean, and I don't like the chrome color or the chrome um, handles and everything. Um, and I don't like the lights that are under the microwave. It's a very whitish blue light, and it's in the refrigerator, and I don't like it. I don't like the mood that is created subliminally in my mind when I um neither when I enter my kitchen to for the purpose of cooking, nor open my refrigerator. And one of the maintenance person, because in an attempt to sort of uh, override the light or change the light, I took an erasable marker and colored the outside plastic, which can easily be wiped off. And in an attempt, again, this is I'm veering off. In an attempt to have the lighting in the refrigerator not be so, it's almost like an artificial cold, like a chilling, like there's something, an emotion of something chilling going on around me, something that makes my skin crawl, or that makes my my psyche feel like, oh my gosh, uh, ugh, um, instead of simply being that I'm going and reaching into my refrigerator to grab some uh, broccoli or cauliflower or whatever to make a meal. Um, so anyway, I started on this project, and it's interesting the politics and alliances that when you take something apart, the alliances that were formed through industry that reveal themselves uh, when you take something apart. And this is Chico's brand. And I don't know where they're made, but I can quickly find out. And it says size two. It says size two. They're a women's pants. And it says size two. And yet they're that's like most of the waistband. Like they would actually fit like a size 16 person, a size 16 female, and these are women's pants. But it says size two on it. And a size two for myself is like maybe probably like this wide. And these are way too big for me. And I'm in what I normally, I'm like a size 9, 10, or possibly even an 11 and 11, 12 right now, trying to get back into a size 7, 8, what I know as a size 8 or 7, 8. So that in itself, I didn't even notice until just now. And I can't find where these were industrially produced. And I got these secondhand in one of the donation centers because I'm not a wealthy person, which is why I decided in the project I'm trying to do, I thought I want denim for this non-associated as far as garment wearing um, project. And yeah, I can't find the. I can probably look online excuse me, after to see where the brand Chicos is produced and the but interestingly enough, as I'm working on this project and all I'm doing is I have a flower pot, a plastic black flower pot, because it's like everything is black right now. And like when I go to buy in the area that I'm where I reside, um, I go to the area store because right now I don't have a car, and it's where I'm geographically confined as far as convenience to go. And and this area is very much more expensive than areas surrounding, which I find to be a cultural um, a cultural inequality, a cultural, possibly political movement, because everything in this area is much more expensive. Like I can go to the very next town and uh, groceries and products are much less expensive. By like, if I buy a tomato here in town, and I don't know what the price difference is because I've gone public on a certain level with acknowledging and noticing this information. That if I travel 10 miles away, which the gas difference sort of then comes into play also in the travel, I can buy a tomato. And again, and I'm giving an example for, let's say, 50 cents. But here in town, so I have to pay uh, to travel out of town, I have to pay transportation to get that less expensive tomato, or I myself have a bus pass. Um, but of course, my time is money also. Um, I don't haven't historically, as in probably throughout all of my existences on Earth, but even in this present day sort of monetarily driven in a very aggressive manner economy, which as a Christian, um, I can feel it because absolutely everything I say is dumped back on my shoulder as a cross I should bear for those who I've caught in the act. Um, so I can buy a tomato 10 miles away for 50 cents. And the same size tomato, uh, assuming the same quality, and honestly, I found the quality of the tomato that I bought 10 miles away to be a better quality than the one that I buy in town for 75 cents. So that's really a huge difference in price. So there is no argument that where I find that difference justifiable, and I think that the the stores involved should sort of get together and say, yeah, well, or that store that is charging 25% less for a better quality tomato and other products should be allowed to move back into this town. Or the grocery stores in this town should start to realize that charging more and trying to monopolize all the money and financial resources because of drought and flood that's going on all around us is probably not the best way to handle uh, the economy or creating a peaceful, diverse um, situation for all nations, including us blonde haired, blue eyed people. Um, and so, as I'm taking this apart, and the politics of this company are possibly the politics of this company, but that could be influenced by the show that I was watching yesterday, or shows. Um, One being about Geronimo. And as I was watching Geronimo and his story, I started to realize his likeness to to Queen Elizabeth in her older age, and to some other prominent. So I started thinking, well, how much mobility did Geronimo have? And then within that documentary, I started to notice one of the buildings that they showed, and I was reminded because I had made note um, of this particular architectural likeness a while ago when I was in Bel Air, Maryland, at um, at Bel Air United Methodist Church, and there's a big, huge wagon wheel um, displayed on the wall, like, the wagons that the pioneers came from the East Coast to the West Coast, and a lot of them obviously stopped here in Colorado. And the building of the Bel Air United Methodist Church itself, ironically, at the time in 2015-16 thereabouts, because in this particular instance and story, the exact time isn't the point. Um, but the outside of the building, as in the old part of the building, um, is a stone building, and it had um, like a lot of sparkly uh, stuff in it. It had a lot of sparkly sediment in the stone. And so I started to realize that that building was probably made from stone that was possibly being um, transported from Colorado into Maryland during the gold rush times. And of course, those involved historically, as in, oh my gosh, like you look just like Geronimo, but this is 2022. Or you look just like Humphrey Bogart, but this is 2022. Or at the time, it was 2014 or 15, 16, or 17. Um, um, so I started wondering about that, and the connection of the wagon wheel to being displayed on the wall, inside wall of the of the um, Bel Air United Methodist Church might be being mined right now, as I'm, or might have been. But then I'm walking around the church, and church members and administrative ministers who maybe aren't on the up and up and part of something that they shouldn't be part of, who possibly are experiencing innocent uh, people, Christians who aren't a member of the church, but frequent the church because I served lunch to the homeless people, being a homeless woman myself at the time in 2016. and they just don't like you wandering around the church. And my view is, first of all, I wasn't initially wandering around the church, and there were no charges, and there are not going to be any charges. I'm not making a public confession right now. There's nothing for me to confess. I'm just speaking about the sort of uh, uh, uncomfortable sort of demeanors of people in the administrative offices and ministerial uh, positions of a Christian church, of which I am a member of Jesus's Christian community. Um, and as a homeless woman and trying to stay inside during the winter to stay warm, or inside during the summer to stay cooler, for as long as I possibly can, I wasn't being invasive or trespassing or anything. I, as a Christian person, have a right, actually, 24/7 to enter any church that I need to enter for any reason whatsoever, as long as I'm not entering for the purpose of like destruction of property, which I wasn't and didn't. Um, and so I just kind of was wandering around the halls and noticed that the what do they call it? The part of the church where the lunches were served, and during other times there were youth activities and stuff like that, because I remember there being, as in very many mega churches, which evidently Bel Air United Methodist Church was trying to enter that mega church arena at some point and possibly gave up. Who knows? But anyway, um, there were basketball things, that were lowered in times, and there was a classroom there. There's a class. There were I think it was elementary. I don't think it went up to high school. So anyway, I'm wandering around, and I happened to notice, obviously, the wagon wheel displayed, and started wondering about that. But that's displayed right outside of the common area where the lunches and everything were served. And there was also two portraits who oddly resembled the two people I know of as Mr. and Mrs. Ernest G. Johnson Sr., my first daughter's grandparents. And whenever I was walking or wandering around, you could rest assured, uh, most likely, somebody was going to come out and say, "Oh, what are you doing?" And, showing more interest in what I'm doing than really needed to be, because I was acting and behaving and motivated very innocently. Anyway, so one of the other things that I noticed about the building, now we had the stone that had that it was that the main area of the building was built on, and that was had a sparkly sediment, and then connecting that to the wagon wheel displayed on the wall, like an actual wagon wheel from back in the pioneer days. And then there is a display case of like Christian artifacts right outside the um, the common area, which was an add-on area. And then I noticed that that part of the add-on area, and I can't even figure how they did this, but there are like three or four cornerstones with three or four different years. And this is on the inside of the building, but it's in formation of the add-on of the the common area, dining room, event room, um, sports area for the youth. And I can't remember what the years were, um, but they went back through history, and one coinciding at least closely with the years of the gold rush. And I can't remember again if it was three or four cornerstones, different years. And then what started to come together and formulate in my thoughts as I'm just sort of wandering around at that point, um, starting to formulate some historical theories, like of what the heck was going on in the church. And one recent historical theory being in why am I suddenly remembering a project of RES Builders when I was working at RES Builders 1,600 miles away in Colorado, being a Bel Air United Methodist Church, and just assuming that it was like a same name. But at the time when I was working for RES Builders, I didn't really, I didn't know about a church in Bel Air, Maryland called Bel Air United Methodist Church on Main Street, Bel Air. So I wouldn't even have at the time made that connection, like at the time when I was working for RAS Builders. Um, because I wasn't, even though I grew up in Harford County as in middle school uh, through age, chronologically age 32, um, I was never aware of Bel Air United Methodist Church because I didn't go to church in Bel Air. And I really, other than the mall, which was on the far side of the town of Bel Air, I didn't spend very much time in Bel Air. And I can honestly say I never had a realization of that church. Of course, I remember seeing it, but I don't ever remember acknowledging or noticing the name or even the denomination of the church. Um, so while I'm noticing and recognizing these three or four, I can't remember if it was three or four, different years chiseled onto these three cornerstones. And again, it comes into significance to the show that I was watching yesterday because one of the mysteries that Brad Metzler is investigating or was investigating. I remember, I don't know if Brad Metzler is still alive, um, at least in the persona of Brad Metzler. Um, One of the mysteries that he was investigating in the episode I watched yesterday was the cornerstone of the of the White House. And what was formulating in my mind at that time was I seem to remember there being some controversy and conspiracy as to whether Washington, D.C. was the actual considered um, capital of the United States, that Denver was actually either the planned capital, the intended capital of the United States. So that turned into some kind of ongoing conspiracy battle to get to the truth of. And I can see the significance of and as to why the truth of that matter would need to come out. First of all, as a Christian person, I am a truth seeker, and somebody went ugh as I said that. Um, but I'm not a truth seeker as much as a truth teller and an innocent person. The truth stories sort of call out to me, which is why uh, this kind of stuff draws my interest. I don't go looking for mysteries to solve. Um, so the fact that and these three cornerstones, and one of the things that he was investigating on the show yesterday, and again the question as to when that show was produced and da da da. Um, but also I noticed around the area the stone buildings, as in houses. There were like two very different stones used, like types of stone to build. And one, the larger houses, the more elaborate houses, and older, were built with this sparkly sedimented stone. And the others were a more like clay stone, or a mixture thereof, like like clay stones and those the other ones mixed together. It wasn't all one type of stone. And I grew a part of my residence, like as in where I lived in Harford County, resided. I like to distinguish between the word lived and resided, because sometimes you're residing, but you're not living. You're not. It's like your life is at a halt, and so that's kind of how I feel about residing where I am right now. Um, because I'm living to a certain level, but not to my fullest capability, I think. Um, and again, that has to do with my mental and physical health. Um, but one of the houses on Route 40 where I resided um, in my senior year of high school, and I'm trying to think if when we moved there, it was an older house that was built with like a combination of those two stones. And it was a more, I really liked the house, but the house had a feeling of being haunted all the time. Like was a very noticeable uh, malevolent presence in the house, other than just Jean and Charlotte. Um, and what's interesting is that when my younger sister was pregnant, she had fallen down the stairs with the baby carrier when my nephew was just a baby. And I'm not making any accusations on this one because she wasn't drunk or anything. She might have had a hangover, but I think it was like midday, so she would have. Uh, anyway, she slipped and fell down the stairs, and I was in the kitchen, and the stairs were like right on the other side of the wall of the kitchen, and I ran over, Leah, and helped her up and everything because I could see that my nephew was in the carrier, and I, as a normal person would respond to an infant in a carrier being dropped inadvertently, not purposefully. Um, um, that I ran over to help her and make sure my nephew was okay. And this was before I had gotten pregnant um, with my first daughter. And since then, I've sort of pondered on that day, not in looking for any kind of accusations to throw. I have enough information to nail my younger sister with in regard to our relationship and her betrayal and all that stuff. I just pondering um, because of um, somebody's trying to get me to say the word otherworldly, because of paranormal experiences that I've had and experienced throughout my lifetime, starting when I was a very young child. And the feeling that I always had, I liked that house. I liked the look of it. I liked the paper, the wallpaper on the walls, even though it looked slightly antique. And but there was definitely a malevolent presence other than Jean and Charlotte Henderson. Um, and as I've pondered different experiences that I've had, both paranormal and real time experiences, a theory started formulating about a toll house, and which is I'm I know that I can say with 100% certainty, and then they say damn sure, and as in, when you're that sure, you must be damned. It is kind of the thing, or an attachment like, oh damn her, she's, you know, um, but that house was a toll house, uh, and it was set. it was set as such because of its location, a toll house in really more Satan's belief system than my Christian belief system. But because obviously the two work against each other in the Christian belief system, and I acknowledge that Satan's power is real, Jesus's power is also. That a toll house back then, like back in the pioneer days, it might have been a place in the pioneer days where people stopped to do some kind of illegal trade. But then later it was used and evolved into like a hooker house, like a place where a man who resided in the city traveled. And now I'm talking about the era of Hollywood, where with Marilyn Monroe era and John F. Kennedy, because these are stories that play in my existence today. In other words, they affect me, even though, as far as I know, or was ever told, I had no personal connection to the story, but it always affects me in a very personal manner. So I'm made to acknowledge every time the story of John F. Kennedy and John F. Kennedy Jr. and all that surfaces periodically, as well as um, uh, Princess Diana and Queen Elizabeth. And so I think that the house that I was living in on Route 40, and I've talked about this before, was during the period of Marilyn Monroe. And I believe that Marilyn Monroe, when you think about the name Marilyn and you realize 100% and know that Hollywood names are aliases, and that girls and guys are given names for reasons of what I can see now in hindsight, uh, that the pimps need to control their hookers, because that's how actresses and models get their start. And and they need to distract biological parents or anyone who cares about that person, uh, before they became or were actually adult napped or child napped uh, into their Hollywood personas. Um, and so that house that we lived in, I believe, was like an on the down low toll house, like a place where the man who resided in the city went and paid a toll and serviced a hooker, like Satan. And these are actual practices, like, oh, well, you're not going to see your mistress unless you pay Satan first, and I got my hooker over here, right here, and you're going to pay. And then you can travel over into Ocean City and spend the weekend with your mistress. That kind of toll. And and that house is located almost exactly halfway in between Ocean City and the Chesapeake Bay. So, like, from that house, you can travel to Ocean City and it takes almost exactly as long to go and head east on Route 40 and travel that way as it takes to travel west on Route 40 and cross the Chesapeake Bay Bridge um, um, into Ocean City via the Chesapeake Bay Bridge and Route 50. Um, and Marilyn Monroe comes up in that house because I started to realize that when my sister fell that day, that it seemed like there was a ghost of a little boy who was very anxious in that house, like who was kept in that house. And I'm not talking about my nephew right now. I'm talking about a little boy who was kept there like in the 50s. And I believe that Marilyn Monroe might actually, maybe she gave birth to a boy in that house. Maybe, and Michael Jackson's father it comes in for some reason. And as everybody knows, that Michael Jackson was not the most reputable parent in the world. And then I realized yesterday while watching this show, oh my gosh, facially, Michael Jackson's father looks like Geronimo. And so I'm like, uh, what the heck is going on? So anyway, back to the theory that Marilyn Monroe might have been one, if not the only, because she was such a prominent, valuable hooker. Um, and that was a more elite location as a hooker house, or maybe it was her home. Maybe it was her home away from her job. Um, there's a poster that I've talked about, that Marilyn Monroe, that when I looked at it, that when I actually, because I've never paid a lot of attention to Marilyn Monroe. I don't, I'm not a person that puts people on a pedestal in regard to their fame. And but again, in this era of my homelessness, um, in Bel Air and Harford County in during like 2014 and um, up to October, up to February of 2018. These are like stories that theories that are formulating in my mind that that seem to be very viable connections and historical truths. Um, and that one of my experiences was that I was making note or paying attention to one of the posters that was posted or on this wall, and I've talked about this, of this man who I stayed with for a few weeks right in Bel Air at Four Seasons um, apartments on, I think that is Route 43, um, traveling from Maine, in town Bel Air to like the rural area of Bel Air. I think that's still considered Bel Air. It used to be actually called Campus Hills, to like Hartford Community College. And the poster, again, I've talked about this story and the man who I resided there with. He didn't really give me the creeps. He was a mental health patient also. And but we were never intimate. And when I started to question this about him, wasn't long after that I left. That in combination with the fact that he tried to get me on the lease again, and I'm presenting as much honesty as I can remember without going too much off topic. But the poster, I was looking at it one day and I was like, that wallpaper where she's in the room that she's standing in, Marilyn Monroe, in this poster, looks like the dining room of the house that we lived in on Route 40. And so that's when I started questioning and formulating the theory, and then thinking about the feeling that of always there being a sort of malevolent presence in that house, even though I liked the house. I liked the front door. I liked the wood that the door was made of. I liked the color of the wood that it was stained. It wasn't really dark. It wasn't really light. I liked the fireplace. I liked the look of the outside of the house, the stone, the stone architecture. And so I still feel like there's a connection. And when you consider what I started to say, that Hollywood personas, their names are aliases, and you consider the name Marilyn, that maybe she resided in the state of Maryland. And right now, other than I'm looking up, so if my I'm looking up the name Monroe and seeing what former President Monroe, what he actually facially looked like. In my opinion, James Monroe, former President James Monroe, isn't a very attractive man, but My question is why Marilyn Monroe or her pimp would have chosen the last name of Monroe. Where was his original politics? Let's see, from at that time. The general survey. I don't want to get too caught up on that. I just, right now, just want to know what state he was originally from. And sorry, all you U.S. history buffs and those who place such strong because of your own lineal connections and nepotistic entitlements. Uh, I've never been a huge history buff. General Survey Bill. I don't know what that's about. I'm just right now looking for the state where he was originally from. You'd think that would be the most obvious and easiest information to uncover, unless, of course, it's the specific information you're looking for a specific reason of revealing maybe some controversial information about U.S. history. I'm like looking at a picture of James Monroe as though I'm speaking directly to him. What state did James Monroe represent? Oh, Spain, 1819. Monroe signed the Missouri Compromise in 1820. Now, there was a question that I had just this morning, and I'm only going to say right now, for the purpose of saving myself getting really angry at a question, at and about a question in regard to my biological children and some stuff that took place during my battle with the state of Colorado and Maryland for custody of my own biological children and things that were done against my Christian belief system. Spain in 1890 signed the Missouri Compromise in 1820, which has allowed Missouri to enter the Union as a slave state and Maine as a free state. Um, so I can't assume just based on that little blurb of information that either state was his original. However, I feel daughter's presence right now because my however just there was definitely a Jennifer Johnson. However, Oh, let's see. I still can't find the original state. I'm just crying because I'm. It's like my daughter Jennifer has entered the room metaphysically. The room, my room, with me. Still can't find. And then there's something about the KK, which I don't care whose accusation wants to. I have never had an association with the KKK, knowledgeably anyway. I know that I have been, I know, images. I clearly have in the search engine what state did James Monroe represent, and I don't think James Monroe played volleyball. Okay, here in 58, in his parents' house in a wooded area of Westmoreland County, Virginia. Virginia would have been is the same state of Thomas Jefferson. So um, Monroe Hall, Virginia. Okay, I don't want to drag anybody into like research that I'm doing, although it seems to be connecting me to my daughter Jennifer and very possibly to my BOTHA children, which is a good thing. Um, I prefer not to be connected through the KKK because I know my daughter didn't have associations with the KKK either. Um, and the fact that Virginia was a free state and that James Monroe signed one state into a thing for slavery and one state to be against slavery. It just goes back to the like. It's like, what are these people thinking? Did they just create politics to create war, like purposefully? I just don't understand it all. But that aside, the fact that and the state of Maryland, where I grew up, but believe I was actually conceived and born in Denver, um, and my uh, first daughter and son were conceived and born in the state of Maryland. Uh, we have a connection to a state that was on the border of the slavery, not slavery thing. Um, Maryland was on the borderline of that war. I get it confused as to whether it was the Revolutionary War or the Civil War. I think the Civil War was about the Indians, and the Revolutionary War was about slavery. Anyway, it, it, every, I don't need to focus on that right now, although I'm hoping my live broadcast is still um okay, yeah. It didn't time out or anything. But um the theory that I was formulating, and the reason I was questioning the connection to Marilyn Monroe, and I was like, okay, so, and that's when I started formulating the theory about the Toll House and all that, uh, and there's further clarification as far as the Toll House cookie is actually involved, as in part of a cover up of the the activities uh, of corrupt government. Um, but back to the poster and the man who I was staying with, I cannot remember his name, but met him at one of the lunches where I was serving at Bel Air United Methodist Church, the homeless community in which I was part of being. I don't want there to be any connection to either the Black Panthers nor the KKK because I don't choose to be in support of either entity. And there's a choose one or the other lady kind of feeling coming into play. Subconsciously, but not so subconsciously right now. Um, the poster he had posted on a wall in the bedroom, and his apartment was very, very cluttered. I mean, I consider my apartment to be more cluttered than I normally would have it be. Um, um, but his apartment was really cluttered, and it was cluttered with collections, and he had a um, a geome collection, and he had a collection of like mallard ducks, or like there are paintings um, where these ducks, and I don't know who the artist is. Probably most likely a member of the Audubon Society, um, and the hunters like to collect these types of things, and I don't like an association with hunters of deer or because I don't it they're to me like go to the grocery store, dude. Uh, it is how I feel about that. But back to the poster, he had a he had a under the poster there was like an antique piece of furniture, like I want to say like one of those old rolling desks, like Charlotte had one. Whether it was the same one and he possibly got hold of it somehow, if Charlotte was getting rid of furniture and getting new furniture. I don't know because I wasn't in contact with Charlotte at that time, and so I'm not and haven't been since. Um, but it seems like it was that type of piece of furniture, but it was rolled. The the thing where you roll it down to close up the desk um, was rolled up, and there were these different pieces of artifacts. One being that what I found to be disturbing um, was like an oval encased in leather, a very heavy object, like maybe a piece of molded steel that was molded in the shape of a perfect oval, and looked a lot like. And now, what's coming to mind is that oval onyx ring that I was given. That now there's controversy attached to that as to whether somebody switched out the ring, and Michael, my first daughter's father, had actually intended and bought a diamond engagement ring, and someone switched it out without him knowing it, as in switched it out and then rewrapped it and slipped it back in his possession to present to me on Christmas Day that day. There is a story formulating where, and the characters involved uh, in my life would actually do something like that. I personally would never think of doing anything like that to anyone. Not from either perspective, not from like the perspective of the prospective groom, nor the prospective bride. Not I've never been uh, such a jealous person to be motivated to do such a thing. Um, um, so this, and I want to say that this artifact went back uh, because I picked it up, and sometimes I can get a feel for something and the provenance of something just by picking it up. And one of the first times I ever realized that was when I was a little girl growing up, and my grandmother Betty had a coffee set that was a coffee pot and a coffee creamer and sugar container. And one of the pieces, either the coffee or the sugar, I talked about this story before with the same presentation. One or the other had a different feel, like it was from a different era, like they didn't match. Uh, but that one, and I was only little when I got these readings. Um, Jesus is my Lord and Savior, and I don't care what any Christian says in regard to what I'm saying right now. Um, um, but they were copper, very, they were very attractive, like simple but attractive uh, coffee thing and creamer and sugar service is what they used to call it. Like you call it a service set, a coffee service set. And the only thing that one of the thing, not the only thing, one of the things about that particular, first of all, I knew from the story, uh, oh, uh, John, and this is overhearing my grandmother talk about it. Yeah, John brought that over from Africa, and John being John Cousins in regard to Charlotte's, or who I knew as Charlotte's first cousin, Fawn Williams, is husband, and they resided in, as the story goes, um, as was told to me, the Cousins family, as in Cousins was their last name, resided in Kenya at the time when I was a little girl growing up. And that service set was brought over or sent by John Cousins. I think I'm remembering it correctly. But anyway, as a little girl growing up, I used to, admired it isn't really the right word. I had interest in it. I was like puzzled by it. And it had like a little thing on the front, but it was never used that I can remember as when it was a decoration, like on the coffee table that she had. So that's the kind of thing I'm talking about when I'm talking about picking up and holding this artifact that was on display on this, what I think might have been an antique piece of furniture located against the wall underneath the poster of Marilyn Monroe in this man's bedroom at Four Seasons Apartments on Route 43 in Bel Air, Maryland. And I got a very negative vibe when I held that, and I started to wonder, ew, this feels like it might have been some kind of torture implement tool. And again, the end was heavy. It was exactly shaped in an exact oval and heavy, like it was made of steel or some kind of very heavy iron metal. And it was encased in some kind of leather and stitched around it very very, I can't think of the word, very like, I'm hand stitching this, and it was even less, I can't think of the word, crudely. Crude is the word, even though um, like not meant to look uh, civilized, like purposefully made. It didn't look like a civilized piece or artifact of anything good. Um, and then there were some other things on displayed on the desk, which I cannot remember because it was only the poster and that thing that was really drawing my attention as in someone wanted a truth to be revealed, and obviously has to do something about Marilyn Monroe and possibly that instrument being used on her. And that stone house, although I liked the looks of the stone the stone house where the poster looks like the dining room of the house that I lived in. As in, like I was saying earlier, I was looking at that, and the distance between those apartments where I was staying with that guy for a short period of time, as in a few weeks, as in like maybe 6 weeks. The distance is like approximately, because the house where I lived and I'm talking about with the malevolent, that seemed it always seemed to have a malevolent presence. Um, was and this apartment complex, although I think there's no connection, but the fact that the history of that location, Harford County, wants to be revealed. There's a story that I seem to be uh, um, connected to, not as in guilt, but as in some kind of possibly biological lineal connection to. Um, Bel Air is approximately, like, I mile wise, I can't say because of the low uh, mileage rate as or speed limits that uh, but as far as time to get, like, 15 minutes difference traveling at an average of 30 miles per hour. Um, and the house being located on a main road throughout history. Like, that was a main Route 40 goes all the way from Joppa, Maryland into Colorado, comes into Colorado, as in that uh, traveled of a of a roadway. Um, and 543 being a country road, like not that long ago, like as in when I was growing up, as in possibly even it might have even been a dirt road when I was a little girl. I didn't move to Harford County, and even when I grew up in Harford County, there's a lot I didn't pay attention to, or I wasn't aware of, including those three little bungalow houses along 543 that were built like in the 1950s era and set off from the road, which was very most likely a country road back in like the days of Malcolm X. I'm going to look up really quickly because the likeness of Geronimo to Mr. Jackson, I only made through like recollection. Michael Jackson's father isn't really a, a persona that I ever had any interest in. He always, every time his face came on the screen, I would get like a chill, like, oh. and still do. I still facial characteristic likeness to Geronimo. And anybody who knows anything or remembers anything about the story of Michael Jackson, and the ironic part of Michael Jackson is, of course, the evolution of his facial appearance. The young Michael Jackson resembles a young person who I remember from my childhood, who went by the name Vince Gordon, and who I thought was a friend of mine. What But Michael Jackson's early character, facially, he resembled someone I went to school with who went by the name Vincent Gordon. Ugh. 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 Um, because of the name Vincent and the sort of ghoulish presence of, and the malevolent presence I always felt at that house on Route 40. I'm looking up Vince Gordon, and right now I'm looking at a photo of Vince, or not Vince Gordon, Vincent Price, because of the ghoulish stuff. And the guy who I was staying with at those apartments, Four Seasons, there's a photo of Vincent Price, who resembles the guy I was staying with, a young Vincent Price. It, these ghoulish types of personalities were just, and it's not funny and cute. And the ghost world is a real world, and angels can emerge, and ghostly presences are real, and ghosts are real, and malevolency, even in the form of a ghost, a person who has passed on and stuck in the spirit world, and might actually be an angel trying to escape the in captive uh, world of ghoulishness, and that Satan wants everybody and Jesus wants everybody, and so that battle presents itself even within the ghost world. And then there's angels and demons, and it's a progressive sort of battle as far as and so this is like really because I did not realize, I never considered uh, Vincent Price to be a someone I would ever hang out with or anything like that. And the likeness of this younger version, I'm going to see if I know I can't post it to this because I don't know how to, but I'm going to post it on my Facebook page. This photo of, because the fact that there's a resemblance of the man who I was staying with this where he had this Marilyn Monroe poster uh, with this sort of ghoulish display with this questionable, in my opinion, instrument of what felt like when the chilling feeling that I got when I picked that artifact up. Anyway, I'm going to see if I can post this photo. I don't like Bing because it doesn't make it as easy um, to repost something. Oh, and a very smell of like stale old men's cologne I smell right now. Very distasteful. I'm going to sign off of my live uh, stream while I'm doing this because I'm going close to 2 hours now.